if Canada managed to make the final against the US, and that's an enormous if, of course, where might it rank among Canadian sporting moments? Of course, that one is going to be earlier in the day. I think that's going to be a 6:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. It's on a Sunday afternoon for West Coast and most of the country. That could rank pretty high, considering that it is on TSN, and I think you'll get sort of that sports bar feel of the country unifying around a team. The problem is nobody knows what this tournament is in the public sphere. And because it's on TSN so late, it's going to be one of those sort of channel flipping things. It's not necessarily appointment viewing, and you're not building up hype in the same way so quickly as you did for the Four Nations face-off when everybody knew what was going on. And the instant it got a little bit enticing, that final was making record-breaking numbers. Could we see 4 million? Yeah, probably. Like, that would be a fantastic number for a final. But I don't think we're going to get to like a formative Canadian sporting moment with this tournament. That comes next year at the World Cup.
Well, maybe I underestimate the hockey crowd in the country, but like, you can't tell me a Nations League versus a Four Nations face-off. Like, it's, they fell in love with a Four Nations face-off. The Nations League just takes a few minutes to explain the history, to look at the history behind it. Yeah, it's not quite the Gold Cup, which actually people will know just because, over time enough people have heard it's like North America's version of the Euros or Copa America, that they at least know what the Gold Cup is. They just might not care as much about it. I do think, the people have shown that ultimately, if the sporting event is on and there's significance, they'll care. So I would throw out the idea that people aren't going to know what a Nations League is, because like, what the heck's a Four Nations face-off? How would you genuinely explain that in layman's terms to someone? Yeah, so the NHL just paused their league and like threw a bunch of guys from different countries into an exhibition tournament, but then they actually kind of gave a shit and started fighting each other, and so people started to care. Like, it was a made-up tournament.
Oh, young Alexander. I wish that there was like, I need a prop, like a, I don't know, if an NFP dad hat that I put on. Your argument was lost the second you said, here's how you have to explain it. And you explained it very well and very eloquently. The reality is it was longer than 2 words. And that's why the Four Nations face-off didn't need any more explanation other than the NHL's best players, Canada, USA. Conversation done. You didn't need to say anything else. And you had people watching. And you had record numbers in the States. But was it not the highest rated hockey game they've ever aired? Like, in today's market with cable cutting, that's insane.
I think it was second to the Panthers-Oilers Stanley Cup final, which was a weird metric. But
okay, so then maybe they're only using like this now, the asterisks of this changed amalgamated metric system that has changed so much that maybe they're not actually comparing. But that's crazy. I think what's unfortunate is, and I just did this with the barber, soccer always requires the explanation. That's the hard part. Now we're explaining even to some soccer people what the Nations League is. Now, I'm not against it. And in fact, this is way better than the old system. They're way better than friendlies. And, Dwayne De Rosario had said before, he said in the book, he'd come home and he'd see people at the mall or he'd see someone at the barber and they'd be like, what are you doing here? Aren't you in the middle of the season? He goes, yeah, we're playing Jamaica at BMO. We're playing Curacao. And they're like, what? People that are actual friends of his are like, know him and follow his career and didn't know that Canada was playing because it was some friendly. I do love that the Nations League is a tournament, but the reality is we're still explaining to people. And when you explain to people that there's another tournament this summer, which is the Gold Cup, and maybe they remember 2000, or maybe they've heard of it, or maybe the Gold Cup's been explained to them as our equivalent of the Euros, then they're like, wait, what do you mean that's not as important as this right now? You said this was just created in 2021 or 2019 or whatever. So the tricky part is we're always having to explain soccer, and we have to explain the Nations League. But if they win this, then we won't. That's what happened to the Gold Cup in 2000. I feel like, you still have to explain it to some people. But if you were into soccer at all, even if you cheered for another nation internationally, you knew what the Gold Cup was because Canada won it in 2000. So that's what winning this Nations League will do.
Well, what I would push back against is that we'll have to explain for the semifinal, no doubt. Like, there's a lot of layers to it. Canada, Mexico, what's this tournament, etc. I don't think you're going to need much explanation for the final, because there you have the sell. Canada, US, final, Trump, you can add that in if you want. You can say World Cup next year. So this is kind of like, that's something the Four Nations face-off did well. It's like, guys, it's the Olympics next year. So this is like your teaser. You can do the same, World Cup next year. prime time Sunday. Like, I do think there are going to be reasons where if they make it to the Sunday, it's going to be fascinating to see how big it snowballs. Because I think that's maybe the point Peekaboo's making, that I think there is going to be a genuine, like, we talk about doors to accessibility. I think a lot of those doors are going to go down for a potential final.
Do you think it will be tremendously bigger in the US? Like, for example, the Four Nations number. Was the Four Nations number actually bigger in the States than here? It's like 9 million down there.
Yeah.
It
was bigger in the States than it was here.
Right. Surprising, right? I think you're going to have the same impact. And to Ben's point from a few weeks ago, like Ben's glee with Jon Stewart making CONCACAF jokes, you're going to get that. All the late shows are going to talk about Canada USA, especially if the States lose and if Trump's tweeting about it, right? So I think that's Canada soccer has never really been in a space like that, like a pop culture. Mind you, it isn't pop culture, of course, but like outside of soccer, to get swept up in something that's very, very mainstream. That's really unique for particularly the men's program and this moment in time. And look, competition wise, I think we all want to see Canada USA, right? And with the trophy on the line, that'd be tremendous. The backdrop to everything that's going on politically will bring out more passion, but competitively, it would be a great game and a great test for Canada.
So who on the Canadian men's national team is doing the night show circuit, do you think? Who are the Kachuk brothers of the Canadian men's national team? In a positive sense, saying they win. And maybe
I was going to say, that's not very Canadian to be going doing media tours after they lose. Heck, even if after they win, you might struggle to coax a few guys. I'm sure they'll reluctantly send out like Davies, I guess, as captain, or maybe
you can't tell me Davies is turning down an opportunity to go in front of the cameras like that.
But if maybe Alistair Johnson ends up being an unsung hero in that regard, and like he loves to speak, he'll say good things. Maybe he'll be the perfect balance of just, you go out, he kind of gives a bit of that, like, no nonsense, going to kill you on the field, but the nicest guy off it kind of vibe. That would kind of fit the sort of Canadian image of this team.
The unique situation is, even though Alphonso Davies is without a doubt the best CONCACAF player and should be, and globally is the most recognizable CONCACAF player globally, he's not the most recognizable soccer player on this continent because of the population of the United States, and that Christian Pulisic has that title. So those guys being on, the Canadian guys being on any American late night show, are only going alongside Jesse Marsh, who will deflect to them and praise his players, but is undeniably going to be the talker and the speaker representing Canada and flying the flag.
Honorable mention to Moise Bombito. I just feel like he would embrace late night talk. Something about him.
That's a good show. I also, what I really like about Moise Bombito, and I don't know how he grew up, but he seems the same. And I should say that I don't understand everything he's saying in French, but there are very few guys that seem to have the exact same persona, comfort level, and ease in two languages. And I find that very refreshing, because when I see him weekly for Nice, he seems to have a lot to say. And when he gets a chance to speak in front of Canadian cameras in English, he seems exactly the same.